Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Leo Young, and this is How's It Going? For today's topic, the title is High Times in Real Estate. So, we're going to be talking about marijuana, CBD, all the good stuff, and how it sort of ties into real estate. And to talk about that, I have a very special guest with me today. He is a former colleague of mine at Tesla, and now he is a co-founder of Intermission, which is a CBD beverage company. So everybody, please welcome Tibor Mascari.
Hey everybody, I'm
How are you?
Tibor and I'm the founder of Intermission, a CBD beverage company that I founded with some friends last year. And we have been working to produce a CBD infused seltzer, kind of like a white claw of CBD, if you will, for release pretty soon.
Nice. Everybody loves White Claw. I was just I was just at the supermarket the other day, and literally everybody is making a seltzer, like
Oh yeah,
Corona, White Claw, Truly, um, Polar,
Bud Light has one now
Bud
too, which is
Light,
crazy, you know.
everybody. So,
So, but I
so
don't see too many with cannabis in it yet.
exactly. So that's the opportunity right there. And just as you all know back home, um, what we talk about in these episodes are just for informational and entertainment purposes only. So before making any material decision, consult the appropriate professional. And you also know that every episode will benefit a different charity. And for this week's charity, Tibor, would you mind introducing it to the audience?
Yeah, sure. So this week's charity is MAPS, or the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They are a nonprofit organization that is working on research for people with mental disabilities and psychological disorders. And in order to do that, they're studying the little known effects of psychedelics and cannabis.
Hmm, very cool. I think there definitely is a lot of opportunity for research in that field, especially with mental health being a more and more of a conversation now in today's society.
Yeah, we've definitely seen how cannabis can benefit people, and I think there's a lot of other substances that deserve our attention too.
Definitely. So I'll put a link to that in the video below. And if you learned something new today, if you had fun watching, I'd urge you to consider donating to MAPS. And with that being said, let's go into our topics today. Now, Tibor, I'm just curious. So, how's it going in your world? How has COVID affected it? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, we founded our company last year with the hope to release our hemp infused seltzer sometime this spring, so spring of 2020. Unfortunately, that didn't really materialize because about a month before we were planning on releasing it, the pandemic hit. So
Wow.
obviously, we wanted to make sure that we could produce a beverage that people could get ready access to. And, that's a little difficult when everybody's locked indoors.
Right.
So instead, we have currently shifted our focus to producing hand sanitizer. Doesn't mean that we're not going to release our seltzer. We still are planning on releasing it this year.
Interesting. And yeah, just so you guys know too, I've actually tried the seltzer and it is pretty good. So I'm excited to see it, Tibor.
Glad you think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anything, this will give us a little bit more time to perfect our flavors and kind of make the best partnerships with distributors too, so that we can get this into hopefully, Maine, Vermont, and maybe even Connecticut to start. So
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. And I definitely want to talk about that a little later. And just so that the audience is aware too, I know this is a common sort of misconception. People use weed and CBD interchangeably, but it's not really so, right?
Yeah, they definitely are different. So, I mean, obviously, weed is the plant itself. Goes by a couple names. That's just one of the many street names. But you know, marijuana and cannabis are probably the most well-known names for it. CBD is just one of the molecules that's a part of the plant, and one of the molecules that has potential beneficial effects for people.
Mm.
CBD is cannabidiol, and it's the non-psychoactive part of the plant. So
Mhm.
when most people smoke weed, they're using THC to get that kind of
Yep.
high. The CBD itself is something that does affect the body, but it doesn't actually affect your mind. So it doesn't impair your judgment or make you feel high in any way.
Hmm. Gotcha. And Tibor, can you just sort of continue on like some of maybe the main benefits of the CBD?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, I'm not a doctor. I just want to put that out there. So, anything that I'm saying is not necessarily for medical use or for medical like referral or anything.
Yeah.
But what studies are showing is that CBD has a pretty amazing effect on anxiety. Primarily, you know, if you use it in any kind of form, like oral use, or even if you smoke it or whatever, it has a great effect on just helping people stay calm. It is what studies have been shown as a like an anti psychotropic. Um,
Mm.
so it's actually the opposite of what THC is. If
Yeah.
you're, what other studies have shown is if you have smoked too much weed, or if you're high on weed and you take CBD, it'll actually bring you down. It will remove your high, which is very
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah. Huh. And speaking of just sort of calming you down, I think that's something that is very useful for people nowadays, right?
Oh
Everyone's
yeah,
yeah.
I certainly think so. I mean, for me, it's something that's very helpful after a long day, because it's so hard nowadays for us to separate our work from our home life, especially now that everybody is locked inside because of the virus. You
True.
know, it's like you're working at home
Yeah.
and you're supposed to relax at home.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, it can be a great way for people to just get into that mode of thinking and relaxing.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And also, I mean, aside from everything that's going on nowadays, with the pandemic and everything like that, I think just in general, people have a tough time just with anxiety and just the broader society's expectations of people are like you have to do more and be more and always be on and
Oh yeah.
work hard as heck and like no rest days. But we all got to take a step back and relax a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think a lot of people have used things like alcohol in the past for that sort of relaxation. And, you know, the jury is still out on if cannabis is good for you or not. But I think as far as CBD goes, um,
Mhm.
with it not really affecting your mind, it really is such a great alternative to depending on something like alcohol to relax. You know, you can just kind of take it before bed, almost like melatonin if you wanted to.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I'd be very curious to see sort of how the CBD drinks sort of industry develops through the next few years, because from what it sounds like on the book, it's pretty much all the benefits. Like it calms you down, and it doesn't change your state of mind, like potentially marijuana, like THC or alcohol does. So.
Yeah. Based on the research that I've done, it's pretty interesting too, because, you know, the main worry I think of taking these sort of substances is, you know, what kind of effect, long-term effect might it have on the body? And at least from the papers that I've read, you know, a lot of substances like alcohol or even THC edibles, you know, like gummies and stuff like that, they'll
Mhm.
go through the liver, and I guess those molecules can, if you know, use it too much, those molecules can have a negative effect on the health of your liver. So
Mhm.
it's interesting to see how these sort of drinks are inventing a new type of smaller molecule that just gets absorbed right into your stomach. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like almost direct, which makes it, in my opinion, such an interesting mode of consumption, the drink, compared to things like smoking it or
Right.
just eating it directly.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and yeah, that's definitely interesting. So I read this article the other day just to sort of tie this into real estate. The National Association of Realtors released this article sort of giving an overview of the potential effects of marijuana and real estate.
Mhm.
Because with more and more states legalizing marijuana, it's becoming increasingly a topic of discussion, and also lawmakers are sort of playing catch up, so to speak, and dealing with a lot newer issues. So I'd like to sort of move the discussion to that too.
Yeah. And so what was your question directly?
So I just wanted to sort of give the audience sort of an introduction of what I read, and then we'll sort of go from there.
Okay.
So, um, just high level, commercial real estate versus residential real estate has been affected in different ways so far. So, in commercial real estate, so like business owners, they're finding or landlords for businesses. They're finding increased demand for land, warehouses, and storefronts, and everything alike.
Hmm.
Um, and what's been your sort of experience with that?
Yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, as states kind of loosen their laws regarding CBD, hemp, cannabis, and those sort of things, I think we're going to see a lot of businesses move in there and seize those opportunities. It's totally natural. And, I would equate this time period that we're in regarding cannabis to be equatable to the, the um, legalization of alcohol after prohibition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's one of those really big cultural shifts where we're seeing a desire for alternative forms of medicine and even greater respect for those kinds of medicines and what they can do for people, just based on results that we've seen in scientific literature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think without a doubt, the industry is already worth so much money that any state that passes these kind of laws is going to see entrepreneurs buy up land for production and things like that.
Definitely. And speaking of that too, the article I read gave some statistics too. So they said that in states where medical and recreational marijuana have been legalized for more than 3 years, they saw increase in demands for commercial properties.
Hmm.
So they saw a 42% increase in demand for warehouses, 27% increase in storefronts, and 21% increase for land.
Wow.
So
So, and that first number was a 43% increase,
42,
42% increase. Yeah. I
big.
mean, I think that the land piece is interesting because I think there's only so many states that might effectively be able to grow hemp and cannabis.
Mhm.
But where we founded our businesses in Maine, they can grow cannabis surprisingly well here. So
Mhm.
I think it really depends on what state it is and how that could affect the market. In other states, I think production and manufacturing will probably be much bigger because we really haven't, I don't think that we've really even seen the tip of the iceberg as far as manufacturing and like further refining of cannabis and hemp products.
Mhm. Definitely. And sort of the nature of this industry is very real estate intensive. Sort of,
Mm,
you need equipment to grow, you need land to grow, manufacture, process it, distribute it. I mean, it's
yeah.
not like a tech company like Facebook or something. That's just, hey, like let's get an office space and then put a few engineers in there and then just churn out a code or something. So
Yeah,
that's something
I
I'm
agree with
thinking.
that. It seems like there's a lot of infrastructure involved already in the business. And the thing is, though, luckily, it will make it easier for smaller cannabis and hemp entrepreneurs to get in, because once some of the bigger players invest in infrastructure, or other entrepreneurs invest in infrastructure for manufacturing, I think other manufacturers who might want to take those, well, let me just say this first.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it's very interesting in that cannabis needs land to grow, plants to be manufactured into an edible form.
Hmm.
And then that sort of hemp extract or cannabis extract is then used for food items like gummies, drinks, maybe even sold as a powder to put into a meal. So I agree with you. There's a lot of types of property that is needed in order to get there.
Hmm.
So once this type of property is done and this type of property is done, then we'll start to see even more people move in, smaller businesses that might want uh, even more property than what was previously offered.
Hmm. Definitely. And you hit the nail on the head right there. I think just with the whole industry too. I mean, it's only been legalized for a few years, right? Colorado was the
Yeah.
first one.
Yeah, I know it's been medically, things have been legal for some time now. And hemp itself was just legalized in 2018, I believe.
Wow.
So it's only been legal for 2 years.
Hmm.
Marijuana slash cannabis has not even been legalized countrywide yet. So
Hmm.
I think we've yet to see even the boom take off.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just thinking about it, it's sort of, for me, I guess, I can see this industry once the infrastructure is laid down and the information, or like the public is educated. I could see this industry sort of, I guess, competing with the alcohol industry. Maybe
Yeah,
not toe to toe so fast, but like to some extent.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it seems certainly like there's a lot of companies that are in alcohol that are now interested in cannabis and hemp too. Um, like we've seen companies like, I think even, let me just pull this up real quick.
Mhm.
So, for example, you have companies like Canopy that are working on making a cannabis beverage as well. But then, like, Constellation Brands has a big piece in them, and like they're a widespread alcohol distributor and owner as well. So I find it very interesting that bigger players in the alcohol industry are getting involved. I think it just shows the potential and where they think this sort of business is going.
Mhm.
So,
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, they're both sort of uh, entertainment for adults. Would you put
yeah,
it
in
that
a way,
way?
yeah. I mean, we see ourselves as an adult beverage business, and
Right.
a lot of these companies either want to pose themselves as like a health product or an
Hmm.
adult beverage. And I just think the adult beverage makes so much more sense because, that's ultimately what people use it for. That's what the majority of people use it for.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of applications for it, and I think a lot of opportunity could be had with just education.
Yeah,
People
definitely.
don't even know what you could do with it yet.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, too, I want to make sure I cover the residential side. So, the article mentioned that residential uh, people, residential real estate people, they're navigating an environment of marijuana being used within rental properties. Homeowner associations creating rules about consumption and growth, and there's different issues here and there just with using weed or marijuana personally, like within a household.
Hmm.
So, um, speaking of that too, I'd like to tell you about this story that my one of my real estate teachers loves to tell, because it's a very relevant topic, especially since we're here in Massachusetts, where it was legalized uh, 3 years ago, right? 2017.
I think it was something like that.
Yeah. So it was still pretty recent, and there's been a number of court cases just dealing with like how do we proceed with this.
I think it was 2016, maybe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. But either way, so weed is legal recreationally now, meaning that a lot of people, a lot of adults will do it, and that number is expected to increase within the years to come.
Yeah.
And with that being said, not everybody owns their home, obviously. So there would be some landlord/tenant issues with that.
Mm.
One of the biggest ones being like, hey, if you're one person in an apartment building and you're smoking marijuana, what are the implications of that, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I could see some people saying they don't like the smell of marijuana and just filing complaints with the property management or the landlords themselves saying like, hey, I don't like the smell of this. Can you do something about it? And the tricky part is that the landlords would have to sort of tiptoe on a fine line.
Right.
So that's because the landlord can say, hey, no smoking. Smoking is usually the most pungent way of consuming marijuana.
Right.
They could say that. But the thing is, if the tenant says, hey, I'm medically prescribed marijuana, and my doctor said to smoke it, the landlord's not a doctor. So he can't
Exactly.
say, hey, can you take a gummy instead? No.
It certainly has ethical implications.
Right. And he can't say, hey, I want to see the doctor slip that said you have to smoke it.
I know. It's
So,
kind of like talking to somebody about their companion animal, right?
right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, I agree. It's definitely a really interesting subject because it just goes along with, how accepting is society of this sort of thing. And I think, we had looked at the numbers when we were talking previously, and it was
Yeah.
actually pretty surprising how many adults have smoked cannabis
Right.
recreationally within the last, I think it was like the last month or so.
Right.
And I don't remember the exact number, but we were both surprised at how high it was. I think it was maybe even as high as 40% or something like that.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
think as time goes on and as these sort of things become even more normal in American society, we're going to see not as many people really care about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what you mean. Some people might be really paranoid about how their neighbor might affect their drug test or something like that.
Right.
And I think the neighbor doing the neighborly thing of like just talking to somebody about it and telling their concerns is probably better than saying like, hey, like trying to get their landlord involved, like
Mm-hmm.
that would be my
Right.
recommendation to anyone who's
Yeah.
worried about their neighbor's consumption of marijuana is talk to them directly about it, because going to your landlord is just going to be like, I don't know, it kind of feels like they're being like a tattletale, I guess. Or like
Yeah.
they're just like, like the old fashioned word for it is like narking on somebody,
Yeah.
right? But like
Right.
now it's legal, so it's like,
Right.
hey, just be a neighbor and talk to them. I don't know.
Yeah. Definitely. And just on that too, I think with the society nowadays, it's just that we're all like so digital and so removed from like physical interactions,
Yeah.
especially with the quarantine going on. It's just like physical interactions or like, face to face. It was like a little bit weird for at least like the millennials onwards, right?
Right. I know what you mean. Yeah. It can be a little bit, I think there's a lot of people who, especially now, haven't talked to their neighbors or talked to strangers in a long time.
Hmm.
So who knows? But I mean, the other thing too is I'm sure if, if let's say my neighbor talked to me and was like, hey, look, I find it really, disturbing that you're smoking in the house or anything, I'd be like, hey, that's fine. I can smoke outside.
Right.
That's no problem. So I think some sort of compromise could totally be made.
Definitely. And yeah, I think, as you said too, marijuana, CBD, it's still a budding industry.
Yeah.
So once there's more education being done and more conversations had, I think this would be a lot easier, or not really that much of an issue anymore in Massachusetts, at least.
Yeah, for sure. I think even now there's enough people that it's barely an issue.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think once states become more confident seeing the results of other states legalizing marijuana and the crap tons of money that they're getting just from
Mhm.
all these new businesses, all the tax that they collect and stuff like that. And not to mention them being able to control it by regulation. I think just a matter of time before more and more states join in, and maybe it becomes legal on the federal level in the next few
I
years.
certainly think so. And, we've already seen some states that you wouldn't expect legalize things like CBD, which I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure in Nashville, Tennessee, that's now legal as well.
really.
So, I think that's pretty interesting is like you're seeing these states that might traditionally seem like they're a little bit more conservative, be interested in doing it. So,
Hmm.
um, they're changing really quickly. And I think there's a lot of people who are very passionate about these sort of topics, and especially when it comes to the medical use and helping their family members,
Hmm.
since we've just seen so many amazing effects of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, the idea behind it is changing very, very, very quickly.
definitely. Um, and yeah, I'd be very curious to see how this industry sort of grows and blossoms, or
Yeah,
flowers,
for
so to
sure.
speak.
10 years from now, it's going to look very, very different to how it is today. And,
Hmm.
I'm really excited to be a part of that and see where that takes our beverage to.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with that being said, Tibor, we're sort of running out of time today,
Yeah.
so let's sort of bring it back to the surface level, wrap it up with a nice, easy question. Can you tell me or the audience what is the best piece of advice that you've been given?
Yeah, that's a great question. The best piece of advice I've been given, I think the best piece of advice I've been given is strive for excellency, not perfection. Because at the end of the day, you can spend hours and hours and hours perfect, and it will keep you from actually getting your goals.
Mm,
You can spend hours trying to make your social media and your days and weeks, honestly, and months trying to get your social media and your website to look absolutely perfect and try to get your follower count up before you start things. But at the end of the day, it's about just dedicating yourself to it and making sure
mhm,
that you just make it as excellent as you can.
definitely. So now that you say that too, so I just finished reading this book, The Four Agreements. Do you
Hmm.
know that book?
I haven't read it, no.
Okay. It's by this guy, Don Miguel Ruiz.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's just saying that there's these people, the Toltecs, they're super wise, and like many of years ago, they know to live their life by four rules or four agreements.
Uh-huh.
So one of them is like be impeccable with your word, um, never take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and the last one is always do your best.
Mm.
And that sort of ties in with what you said too.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to always put your effort into it. But again, like that other piece is just like, don't try to make it perfect because like there's no such
Right.
thing.
Yeah, it's a learning process, that like when you're like starting a business, when you're doing these things for the first time, you don't know what it's going to be like on the other side, right?
No, exactly. And you can only do so much as you know. But hey, you're right. As long as you put your best effort into it, you be your best. That's how you get the best results.
Definitely. Well said, Tibor. And just to summarize what we sort of talked about briefly today, so we sort of looked at the high level, what marijuana is and how that is different from CBD, and sort of the benefits of basically the entire marijuana industry and all its different branches like CBD, like THC, and different things like that. And we sort of looked at how they potentially affected real estate prices and real estate demand. So certainly an interesting thing to be following along for the next few years, especially in the states that it's been legalized in.
Yeah.
So do you have anything else to add, Tibor?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Of
Okay.
course, if you want to learn a little bit more about intermission and you want to learn about the products that we're creating, you can follow us at IM, the letters, and then intermission for our social media accounts, or you can check out our website, intermission.us, and that will tell you guys a little bit more about the hand sanitizer that we're producing, since we have a lot of ties in the brewing and the distilling industry. So check us out and let me know what you think.
Awesome. So I'll put the links to that below in the video as well. And with that being said, Tibor, I think this was a great conversation that we had, and thank you for coming on.
No, thank you so much for having me on.
Definitely. And one last reminder to the viewers, I'll put the link of the charity of the week maps below. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoy watching in general, consider donating. And with that being said, I will see you all next week.
Take care, everybody.
All right. See ya.